Oh, hey there, spooky listener. Good news. You still have some time before the episode starts if you want to scroll up and hit that follow or subscribe button, depending on whatever platform you're listening to this on. We have no preference, they're all good. If you're feeling really generous, you can even leave us a little review. We like 5-star ones the best. And tell us why you like the podcast. If you don't like the podcast, that's cool, but why are you listening? There's loads of other stuff to listen to out there. If you want to send us a little more detailed feedback, we have a dedicated email address. It's rowanandpinepod@gmail.com. The and is spelled out, so it's Rowan, A-N-D, pinepod@gmail.com. And also, please use that for spooky stories and encounters and stuff that you just want us to talk about on the pod. And failing all that, if email's not really your thing, you can always find the links to any of our socials in the link tree that's in the description of every episode. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Discord, whatever it is that you like to use. And make sure to tag us if you're recommending the pod. Also memes. Did you get all that? Good. Okay, start the intro music.
We're back.
Part 2, baby.
Howdy.
How's it going?
We're refreshed. It is a new
It's
day.
a new day. We're not wearing the exact same clothes.
Yeah, we're not doing the exact same thing that we were for our last
My
episode.
arse is not numb.
My ears don't hurt from having these headphones in.
How have you been, Emily, since I last talked to you?
Great. How about you?
Oh, yeah, great. I have aged a whole 4 minutes.
It's actually been 6.
We are doing a recording sprint, but it's going to feel really good when we're finished and we have basically a month's worth of content.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because I was kind of like, oh, maybe we could do part 2 later. And then I was like, actually, if it's all done and you don't have to worry about doing anything for a while, that's nice.
Because also, by the time this episode goes up, I will have surprised you in with his birthday trip away. So I'll no longer be keeping a secret for months. Very hard to keep a secret from somebody you live with and that you tell everything to. So, but yeah, Emily's already been absolutely inundated with everything to do with this trip. She knows about places in London that she does not care to ever visit.
Yeah.
Because she's been getting a rundown, a play-by-play. Geographical locations.
It's cool, and all the places sound great and look great, and just makes me sad that I can't join.
But we've already made a very loose, very pie in the sky, but very much real plan that we will do a trip to Edinburgh someday.
We decided this?
Yes, I decided. No, do you remember I showed you that amazing hotel?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I said when our podcast becomes, when we hit the big time, that we're going to go to this amazing hotel in Edinburgh.
When we have a Patreon where at least 3 people are donating $1 a month.
Please give us $1 a month.
We'll go on a big trip, baby.
My coffee habit is out of control.
Oh my gosh.
That would pay for a coffee. No, actually, it wouldn't even pay for a coffee.
I wouldn't even pay for a coffee.
Wow.
Because that would be $3 a month split between the two of us.
Oh, true, yeah. Oh, that's depressing. How do people make money on Patreon?
So what is that? Like $1.50 each? $1.50?
Yeah. And then what's that when
and
you
then you got
to
currency
euro?
exchange. Yeah. It's a mess.
It's a whole mess. But you know what? We're going to keep on trucking. And we're back with another episode. We're still in Appalachia because it's just way too cool and way too rich a history and folklore tradition to just do one episode, even though Emily's episode was great. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure it was absolutely fantastic. It's just, I really love the editing.
Yeah. The editing was top notch.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, we just sounded really good when I edited it out, all of our awkward pauses and rants about stuff that we see online.
And my fumbles.
She had a couple of fumbles. It's okay.
Nobody would know this, but I fumbled through most of that episode.
But you know what? The throat demon only came back once, so...
Yeah, Throat Demon only appeared one time for that episode, so that's cool.
It's kind of amazing, because normally the Throat Demon gets its phlegmy little claws out at the start of every episode for, if not Emily, me sometimes as well. So I don't know.
And it never fails. I don't understand how you and I could be talking for like 45 minutes prior to recording the episode. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then the minute we start recording, it's just like,
she starts hacking up a hairball.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so.
But hi, I'm Emily.
And I am Niamh. And
this is Rowan and Pine.
This is Rowan and Pine. And you only had to wait 2 weeks for this episode, so stop complaining. Shut up.
Yeah, seriously.
My God.
Quit
yeah,
it.
you're so whiny. You became so whiny while we were
Nobody
away.
likes you.
All of you listeners.
Side note. Another side note. I cannot remember who it was, but someone that I was talking to recently who listens to our podcast, who is like a friend of mine, was saying that your accent is so thick sometimes that they don't understand you. And I was like,
oh no.
Wait, really? Because to me, your accent is very clear.
Yeah.
Like,
and
it's
also,
not, because there's some like English and Irish people where I'm like, hold
and also,
on.
this is
sorry.
my podcast voice, so it could be even worse.
Do you talk to me off the podcast in your non-podcast voice?
Yeah, kind of. But I probably, when I'm speaking to people not from here, I'll usually try and speak a little bit more clearly. Because, like, I even had people say to me, like, when I was living in Canada, like, I was on the phone to my dad one day because I called him from work for his birthday. And I hung up and my coworker was like, I did not understand a word you just said to your father. Like, your voice just completely changed.
That's so weird. Now I want to hear that.
Do you not get, like, more Minnesota when you go home?
Maybe.
No?
I know sometimes when I get really worked up about stuff, I turn a little more Minnesotan. And it's funny because then I can hear it and then I get more upset.
Okay. Well, I have a homework assignment for your friend. You can watch Dairy Girls with the subtitles on, and then you'll get used to my accent.
Honestly, Dairy Girls was harder to understand than you are.
Yeah. Well,
there were times.
The Dairy accent is a lot like where I'm from in Donegal. It would be like a lot milder version of a Dairy accent. Like
Okay.
They probably sound more or less similar to you, but Dairy people are a little bit more nasal. And it's like, catch yourself on, hey? That kind of stuff.
I remember texting you about various slang that they were saying in that show, and I was like, what does this mean? Help me. I don't understand what's happening.
Like, just doing little translations. Yeah.
Yeah, but then also subtitles, because I was like, I don't know what they're saying half the time.
Okay, Yeti's back. Yeah, it looks like Yeti's back. That was about 30 seconds. I don't know. I'll find it. I'll match it up again. Yeah, Yeti's my microphone.
It's funny.
That's the name of the model.
I love it.
Actually, I never made that connection.
I'm drinking from a Yeti.
Oh, cool. And we're talking about Sasquatches, which is vaguely related. The cousin of the Yeti.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's just a different name for Bigfoot.
Yeti's in the snow, wasn't it? Abominable snowman, that kind of thing.
Yeah, is the Yeti the snowman one? Yes. Right. Okay, sorry. I forget. How could I forget? Yeti is my personal favorite out of all of them.
Yeah, Yetis are awesome. Have we done Yeti?
No.
We should. December. So we don't need to go back through all of Appalachian folklore, because I gave you a little bit of background. There will be a test at the end of the episode.
You mean the like the stats about the population and the mileage and all of that stuff?
Yeah, all of the context for the place that we're visiting for our nice little journey through the Appalachian region. Appalachian. But one group of people I didn't really speak about, and it was intentional, was what I've seen referred to as Appalachia. Appalachia is a term that focuses on the cultural contributions of African American artists, writers, and musicians within the Appalachian region. The term was coined by a Kentucky-based writer called Frank X. Walker, who began using it in the 1990s as a way to negate the stereotype of Appalachian culture. So, like we were saying before, most people know Appalachian people. They always think of them as predominantly white people, those descendants of the Scots-Irish, like I was talking about before, but that sort of ignores a whole part of the population which are descended from enslaved people and also free African people who settled in the region. The term stands for African American who is a native or a resident in the Appalachian region. Some Africans lived freely in certain mountain communities for generations, and probably the biggest contribution that we would think of is the banjo, the folk instrument that's very highly associated with bluegrass music and Appalachia. So it has its roots. Bluegrass has roots in like Irish folk music, like the really fast like banjo strumming and all of that. But it was actually originally brought over by enslaved Africans, the banjo, and it's sort of merging of these cultures is where bluegrass music came from.
So, sorry, clarification. So the banjo was like an African instrument, and then the U.S., like the people who had like settled here and were enslaved here and stuff, or more settlers. I don't know that Irish people were drug here as slaves. So they like, then that's how it got to Ireland?
So Irish folk music merged with banjo music and became bluegrass. So the banjo wouldn't have, at that point, I don't think it would have been like a traditional Irish instrument, and probably then it just sort of fanned out. So bluegrass is sort of a unique merging of
that's super
cultures in Appalachia.
I love that.
It's really cool.
I also love the banjo. I think banjos are super cool. The people who play them are talented.
It's incredible. And there's also this like, would you even call it like a subgenre? It's kind of like folk banjo, but like atmospheric banjo. And I always there's a song called Mountain Air by an artist called Cody Francis. And it's just a complete instrumental, but it's literally somebody just playing a banjo with like this really roomy, like atmospheric sound behind it. And it's just, it makes you think of like an Appalachian forest. Wow. It just brings you there. It's incredible piece of music.
It sounds really awesome. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. And we can't really talk about enslaved people in Appalachia without referring to the Underground Railroad. For anybody who's not really sure, the Underground Railroad ran from Tennessee up to the north via Appalachia. So it was formed in the early 19th century, and it was a network of secret routes and safe houses used by enslaved people of African descent to escape to the free states in the north. There were many different routes that slaves or enslaved people took as they travelled north to freedom, and one route through Maryland was frequented by the most famous conductor for the railroad, Harriet Tubman. Due to its geographic location, tough terrain, and abundance of hiding spots, the forested corridor along the mountains was an ideal route for freedom seekers escaping the north. In a historical deposition, John Rhodes wrote about the Underground Railroad and his brother-in-law, Abraham Heatwell, another conductor who was a landowner and a farmer in Virginia. He said his house was a kind of depot for refugees and deserters. He had a very good place for concealing them where they could not be found. Undoubtedly, the success of this depot can be owed partly to the ruggedness of the surrounding Appalachian landscape. So this is something that could have only really happened somewhere like Appalachia, where it was so remote and rural and people could actually stay hidden and be hidden.
I was, a little bit of a tangent, but I watched this, being with a baby who has to nap on you like all the time, I've watched a lot of shows, and one of the shows that I've been watching is the show called American Pickers. I don't know if you're
I've
familiar
seen it like
with that.
advertised. It's always on like, is it like, Discovery
or like the Travel Channel or something like that. But they're these guys who just go like to different places across the United States and like old farmhouses, like old buildings, old businesses, stuff, and then they buy like antique stuff. Like a lot of, they're big into like old signage and stuff like that. So like old like hand painted signs from
like
gas
old like
stations
Americana
and things like that.
sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but also just like weird stuff. I don't know. They were all over the place, but it's really cool. It's what's even more cool about the show is that they go to some of these places, and the people who are there are almost like historians who talk about like the area and the history of the area and whatever. And this one place they went to, I wish I could remember where it was, but it was a stop on the Underground Railroad, and it was a place where women would like quilt together, and it was like they had like a little kitchen, and they would kind of like hang out and quilt and stuff. And the woman had these quilts that they had made, and based upon what was going on with the Underground Railroad, they would hang the quilt outside of the place, and different symbols on it meant different things. Like if like police were investigating or in the area, they would put up like a quilt that meant like don't come here, don't stop here, it's not safe. Or like it's safe, or like we have food, we have shelter, like we have room for you, like all that different stuff. And I thought that was so cool.
That's so cool. Like, and when you think of, there was probably a high percentage of them that weren't literate, like because they weren't allowed to learn to read and learn to write. So it's like this, it's a different form of communication that they were able to do. And it also could carry over long distances, you know, because you could see it from the, you know, however they were traveling.
Yeah, I also just think it's so cool because of, not to go on like the biggest tangent ever, but because it's not like the newest thing that's happening within the art world, but a lot of times like embroidery and like quilting and stuff like that hasn't been viewed as art. It's just been viewed as women's work. And there's kind of like, you know, women push back against stuff like that, and they've been like you don't think this is art because it's like a quilt, when like if you see some people, like there's an artist who does portraits that are like all these different colors and all this stuff, and it's all quilted, which is insane. And it just makes me think of how, you know, like especially back in like the Underground Railroad times, quilting, it very much was just like, oh, that's just like women's work. They're just making blankets. They're,
it's functional, you know, it's not like,
but it's like
expressive.
But it's also kind of like a folk art thing. And I don't know, it's just really cool to me that it's something so like innocuous, but at the same time was like so important and did so much to help other
saved
people.
So many lives.
But like, yeah, but the people were just like looking over it because they're just like, oh, it's just a blanket.
Yeah,
like
it's like just a real like kind of guerrilla resistance sort of thing. Like,
yeah, and it was a lot of women who were doing stuff on the Underground Railroad, like feeding people and, you know, like all this kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's just women rule. That's all I'm getting at.
Hell yeah. Oh,
sorry.
That's fine. No. Thank you for that. That's cool. It's a cool like humanizing story, because as much as like the Underground Railroad is like a, you know, you hear it like just being like sort of talked about in passing and stuff, and like for me it's something that like I would have had to actively like Google what it was, like if I heard it on like TV or something like that, because obviously we don't really learn about it. I don't think we do. Maybe the curriculum has changed, but yeah, it's important to remember these things, especially when there are people who are trying to suppress this sort of stuff being taught, you know?
Yeah, which is terrifying. But we're not here to talk about that.
We're not here to talk about that. But all of that to say that this context is inextricable from Appalachia and from some of the stories that I'm going to tell now. So the first one takes place in Crockett's Cove in the 1910s.
Like so Davy Crockett?
Yeah, I was trying to look up where Crockett's Cove was, and everything that just kept coming up was Davy Crockett. I'll just do one last search. Oh, it's in Wythe County, Virginia.
That'd be so hard to not keep saying Crockett's Grove.
Yeah, Crockett's Grove.
Sorry.
Crockett's Cove. So, as lots of these stories start, there was a young man looking for a missing cow. They're always looking for missing livestock or something like this.
Are they looking for a boy cow?
So the young man was out looking for this missing cow and he heard a noise coming from the woods. So obviously he's thinking, that must be where my cow is. But when he went in to the woods, he saw a man leaning up against a tree, holding his stomach, and there was blood soaking through his dark blue jacket. So the stranger called out to the boy, begging him for help, and the boy agreed to help him. He ran back to his farm as fast as he could to get help, and he returned with several men to carry the wounded stranger out of the woods. They couldn't find him. There was no sign of him. And the boy insisted that he wasn't lying and that there had been a man in the woods bleeding. They asked the boy to describe the man. He described a man wearing a dark blue suit with black boots and a satchel over his torso. The man was a Union soldier. Bear in mind, this was in the 1910s. The wounded soldier has been seen several times in the woods since by different people after that. Some people who see him are out hunting. Some people are foraging for sassafras and others are just exploring. But it seems like the soldier is still out there, having never made it back home to his family. Like, so that's just like the first taste of like what could be wandering around in those woods.
What's over there them in their woods?
What's in them their woods?
Yeah, what's in them their woods? Easy for me to say.
Union soldier.
A Union soldier, that's who. I hate that the moral of the story is like, don't help somebody who needs help.
Yeah. When you're looking for your cow, you might find like a bleeding Union soldier in the woods.
Don't help him.
So there's like a lot of sort of weird, like unexplained things throughout Appalachia, obviously. But one of the most strangest ones was a sky battle.
A sky battle?
Yeah. So in North Carolina, in a place called Chimney Rock, there was a weird series of sightings recorded and what people think is an aerial battle between armies on winged horses.
Wow.
So the first story is from the late summer of 1806. An 8-year-old girl named Elizabeth Reeves told her older brother that she had seen a man on top of Chimney Rock. Now, this was the time in 1806 before people were just going out rock climbing. So it was a bit weird that there was somebody standing on top of this like massive like outcropping in the rocks.
Yeah.
Hundreds if not thousands of feet up. So her brother didn't believe her, but she persuaded him to look, and when he looked up, he saw a lot more than just one guy. He saw thousands of people, he referred to them as, flying through the air around Chimney Rock. The children described the people they saw as being clothed in brilliant white and generally human in shape, but they couldn't make out distinct features, and there was no clear differentiation of their age or their gender.
Weird.
Even more interesting is their mother corroborated the sighting, and their youngest sibling, as well as a neighbour and another local woman, all spent the next hour watching this strange spectacle unfold before the apparitions just disappeared into the heavens. That wasn't the only time. Several years later, in the summer of 1811, another strange apparition appeared by Chimney Rock. There was a pair of armies riding tiny winged horses, meeting in a fierce battle in the air. Over the course of several evenings, multiple witnesses in different locations saw two opposing cavalry riding winged horses and circling each other in the sky. On the final evening, the two armies finally engaged each other and clashed in the sky over Chimney Rock. The cavalrymen were armed with swords, and 5 witnesses said they could hear the distant sounds of clashing metal and the groans of the wounded.
Wow.
The battle lasted only about 10 minutes, and then the defeated army retreated and the victorious army evaporated into the darkness. This was such a big event that a public meeting was held.
Wow.
Public soon settled on the idea the battle must have been a divine vision from the looming Revolutionary War, but there was never a scientific or logical explanation made for either of them.
That's so crazy.
In the sky over this one place.
Yeah.
Because you're like, if it was just lights or like if it was like weird like ball lightning or something like that, you'd be like, oh, but like these people are just saying they're seeing literal like battles take place.
Yeah. And what's so weird is that like a lot of different people saw it.
And it's like, obviously somebody's not believing what they're seeing, and then they're, going to get somebody and being like, can you see this? Am I going nuts?
Yeah. That's a super cool story.
Yeah. And it's very specific, too.
Yeah.
I've
never heard of that before.
The next one has a little bit of a celebrity element.
Ooh.
Our next haunted place is Dr. Carroll's Sanatorium. So this is in the historic district of Montford that was once home to a number of private hospitals for tuberculosis and other ailments. Which, whenever I hear tuberculosis hospital, I'm like, haunted.
Most definitely haunted.
They're always haunted.
They're always like, it seems like every time there is like, oh, it's a haunted hospital, it's like, and this was treated, or this was a place that treated tuberculosis patients. It's like, of course it was.
Yeah, and there's always like some like tragic story of a little child who has like lost their doll or something.
Yeah.
Also, a side note, I had a history teacher in secondary school who used to pronounce it tuberculosis, and every time I read tuberculosis, that's all I can do.
Tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis. Like, have you never heard that word? And how are you pronouncing it tuberculosis? You're a history teacher.
Yeah. Even that's something that even the Americans and the people across the Atlantic agree on. We all say tuberculosis.
Yeah, it's not some weird, like, I don't know, some weird, like, regional thing.
Yeah.
Tuberculosis.
Like how...
And how has nobody corrected her?
Seriously, unless she's one of those people who, like, you correct her and then she's like, no, that's not right. You're wrong. Yeah. I'm right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
You were the one person who says it this way.
Yeah. You with your degree and you know everything.
Yeah.
Correctly. Except for how to say tuberculosis. Dr. Carroll's Sanatorium was also known as Highland Hospital, and it was founded by the psychiatrist Dr. Robert S. Carroll, and he was well known because his treatment program for mental health and nervous disorders based on exercise, diet, and occupational therapy attracted patients from all over the country. So it actually sounds like he had like a decent plan in place. It wasn't just like drug him up and lock him up.
Yeah.
You know, he actually had some sort of like cognitive behavioral thing in place here, which is, you know, good for him.
Yeah.
In the old timey times.
I'm proud of you.
Just lock some woman up for, you know, reading or something.
Right. She's reading. She has psychosis.
She's wearing socks. She's hysterical. She's been brushing her hair too often. So the sanatorium campus included landscape grounds for patients to roam, a variety of buildings erected in Georgian, colonial, Norman, and arts and crafts styles, and Dr. Carroll's personal residence, Homewood. Dr. Carroll's wife, who was called Grace Potter Carroll, which is such a great old-timey name.
It is.
She was a world-renowned concert pianist, and she ran a music school out of their house as well. And she actually taught Nina Simone how to play piano.
I don't know who that is.
Nina Simone, she's like a jazz singer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Never heard of her.
Now I'm second guessing myself. But that's not actually the celebrity element that I was going to talk about.
It's not the celebrity I've never heard of.
The celebrity element actually comes into play on the night of March 10th, 1948. So during the late night hours, a deadly fire broke out in the main building. One of the nurses was among those who testified about the fire. She discovered that the kitchen table was ablaze at 11:35 p.m. When asked why she hadn't tried to put it out, which her name was Doris. What the fuck are you doing, Doris? Just leave a fire.
Damn it, Doris.
She said she had never witnessed a destroying fire before. The fire took the lives of 9 women.
Doris.
Among the victims was Zelda Fitzgerald, the wife of F. Scott Fitzgerald, and who was rumored to be the real author of The Great Gatsby.
That's how she died?
Yeah.
What in the world, Doris?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I mean, nobody should have died, but really?
Mm-hmm. And since Zelda's untimely death, there have been accounts of her roaming the place. Most of the campus was destroyed in the fire, but enough of the architecture has been preserved to draw her ghost or to tie her to the location.
I like what you just did with your hand.
Yeah.
Preserved.
Preserved.
It's like the Great Gatsby,
oh yeah, like
Leo.
Yeah. Which if you joined our live, you will have seen me with doing that as well. Because I had the glass. Old sport. People who have spotted Zelda's ghost note that she has, like, some people don't even realize it's her, but they describe her as having a doll-like face, a paintbrush in her hand. She loved painting. And she's always wearing red ballerina shoes. And those are the last things to disappear when her ghost vanishes progressively from head to foot.
Interesting.
Yeah. She got flair. She got style. She was a flapper, so she was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. She seemed like an awesome woman, you know?
It's like, it makes me imagine a ghost being like, again, what we do in the shadows reference, how they go, bat, and then they turn into a bat. It's like, she like wills her ghostness to disappear. So she's like ghost, and then the ghost disappears, and then she's like, oh shit, I forgot my shoes.
I ended up actually reading a little bit about her just when I was reading this story, and her husband wanted her to write like a review of his book for the paper, but when she read the book she realized how much he'd stolen from her, so she just absolutely slammed him in her review. Talked about how much that he'd borrowed off her and taken, like, lifted out of her journals.
Yeah, I also just realized that I started watching a show that was about her, and I think it's called Zelda, but Christina Ricci plays her.
Oh, cool. Love Christina Ricci.
Yeah, me too. And now I'm like, wait, was there no second season?
Oh,
I'm like, I want to keep watching.
sucks.
I think it was on Amazon if anybody wants to watch it.
I actually realized I still had the article about Zelda Fitzgerald open on like one of my tabs.
Yeah.
One of the things that made me laugh when I was reading it was she used to go to like public bathing spots but wear like a nude swimsuit so that people think she was naked in public.
That's so
but she
funny.
wasn't, so they couldn't actually do anything about it. What a legend.
Yeah, she seemed pretty cool.
When Scott was set to publish The Beautiful and the Damned and the New York Tribune, he asked Zelda to write a review of the book in the newspaper. In her scathing article, Zelda detailed for the first time what had been going on since they'd become an item. She said, "It seems to me that on one page I recognized a portion of an old diary of mine which mysteriously disappeared shortly after my marriage, and also scraps of letters which, though considerably edited, sound to me vaguely familiar. In fact, Mr. Fitzgerald, I believe that is how he spells his name, seems to believe that plagiarism begins at home."
Yeah, this was in the show.
Oh, yeah?
Where she's like, that was my diary, and he's just like, what? And he's like properly like gaslighting her.
Like, what?
No,
What
I
an
wasn't.
asshole. He clearly
like,
wanted her as like the trophy, kind of, because he was like, oh, she's like America's first flapper, like, you know, she's such a rebel. But then, just like fucking Jonah Hill, he's like, no, not that rebellious. I'm gonna steal your stuff.
one of the podcasts I was listening to was talking about like that, like the Jonah Hill stuff and whatever, and it was what were they saying about that kind of like dynamic of like the guy who wants the wild girl but he doesn't like actually want her, or he like wants her because he wants to tame her and he's like upset. Like basically it's like they want to be with you because you make them mad and they want to be able to control that, which is so fucking
And it's
annoying.
just that's what was so annoying about that. It's like, you knew what she did. You knew what she did for a living when you got together with her, and that's exactly what attracted you to her. So what do you expect? Like, what do you want her to do?
Yeah. And the fact that she was like significantly younger, it just like makes me even more mad.
Like, he's like a huge Hollywood celebrity. Like, she was probably a little bit overcome by that as well, you know?
Yeah. I've always fucking hated him. I do not like him.
Yeah, I saw like a meme that was just like, everybody who's just hated Jonah Hill for no reason feels really validated right now.
That's me.
There's no better feeling than when you hate somebody and then you get proven right and you're like, I fucking knew it.
Right. But there's the he had the documentary where he like, it's about his therapist.
Oh yeah, I saw him promoting that. I haven't watched it though.
And I only want to watch it because like I would be that type of person who would be like, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Bell Witch.
So the last story was one that when I came across, I actually did a little happy dance because I was like, oh, I didn't even make the connection that this was an Appalachian story. It's probably the most famous American ghost story. I only heard it in the last like few years.
Oh, really?
It didn't grow up with it, no. But yeah, it creeped the fuck out of me the first time I heard it, and it creeped the fuck out of me again when I read that. When I was making all of the notes for this and I was doing the research.
You're writing your notes late at night, just like looking around.
genuinely, like, I came out of the room and it was dark in the hallway and I was like, ugh. Just like weird sounds.
And your void of a cat jumped out.
Yeah.
You're like, oh God.
One that we have nicknamed Spooky because that's all he is. He just walks around spooking people. We actually had somebody come to the house today to like just check something for the building, and Balor came running out of the room, and I've never seen a woman jump higher in my life. She didn't know I had cats. I think she thought it was a rat or something, because if she does inspections, she probably sees them. And I was like, sorry. I was like, it's just my cat. And she was like, no, I'm just really happy it was a cat. I was like, okay, yeah, I get it.
That's so funny. Oh my God.
But he always just looks real shifty and looks like he's like up to something. He's a spooky boy.
He's a spooky boy.
This story dates back to North Tennessee in 1804. A man called John Bell purchased 320 acres, which in some sources it says 1,000 acres, but the first source I saw 320 of farmland, and he built a cabin for himself and his family. By 1817, he had cultivated the land and became a member of the local Red River Baptist Church. They said that he had become one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the community, respected for his integrity of character, Christian devotion, and generous hospitality. His house had become the home of every passing stranger, and neighbours delighted in frequent calls and visits.
That's where he messed up.
Yeah. Don't let people in.
Don't let people in. They'll curse you. You'll get a witch. You'll get a ghost. You'll get something.
Mm-hmm. You'll get some fuckery about your house.
Yes.
It didn't take long, because one day he was out walking his land with a shotgun, which, America, when he noticed a weird-looking animal among the rows of corn that he had on his land. He said that the animal resembled a dog, but had the head of a rabbit. Appalachia.
Sounds kind of cool, to be honest. I was like, I want that as a pet.
Yeah.
Or do I? I don't know.
It also kind of reminds me of the puka, which we talked about like around one of our Halloween episodes, where like it's like a shapeshifter, and it just seems to be, sometimes it's a donkey, sometimes it's a little black foal. It's a mishmash of things.
Yeah.
So, of course, he did what any reasonable person would do, and he shot at it. But it disappeared into thin air. It like literally dematerialized in front of his eyes. That was only the beginning. So he had several children. Two of them, Drew and Betsy, also began to see strange creatures near the property. Drew was outside one day and he approached an unknown bird which was perched on a fence, and the bird flew off, and he said it was of, quote, extraordinary size. Betsy observed a girl in a green dress swinging from the limb of an oak tree. Now, the first time I read that, I thought it meant she was hanging from it.
Oh, no.
Just shows where my brain was at the time I was reading this.
Yeah.
But I think it means like literally sitting on a swing.
Yeah.
This little girl she wasn't real, basically. Like the very first creature dematerialized as Betsy was looking at her. Now, the reason I wanted to provide some context about enslaved people in Appalachia is because they do come up several times in this story, and they might have had a very important role in this story, which we'll get to. So there was a man called Dean who was a person enslaved by the Bell family. He reported being followed by a large black dog on the evenings where he was allowed to go visit his wife.
Oh my goodness.
But these creatures, if it had stopped there, fair enough, that's creepy, but that is not where it stopped. The entity, as we are going to now call it, first started interacting with the family home by a series of knocks on the outside walls late at night. The weird stuff then moved inside the home. The family reported sounds of gnawing on the bedposts. They could hear what sounded like dogs fighting in the room, but there was nothing there.
Yikes.
And chains being dragged along the floor. Sometimes it would sound like somebody was kicking against the ceiling or was literally kicking over furniture. And creepiest of all, in the dark, they could hear choking and gulping sounds like someone was being strangled.
I was going to say, how could it be creepier than dogs fighting in your room that aren't there? But that is definitely creepier.
Somehow that became creepier.
Oh my gosh.
The family said as soon as they would light a candle to try and investigate the disturbance, the noise would stop. Then things became physical. John Bell began experiencing a strange paralysis in his mouth. He said, "It was a stiffness of the tongue which came suddenly and for a time, and when these spells were on, I could not eat." He described it as feeling like there was a small stick of wood crosswise in his mouth, pressing out both of his cheeks. When he attempted,
Weird.
yeah, it's weirdly specific too.
Yeah.
When he attempted to eat, this like phantom piece of wood would push any food that he put in his mouth back out, and of course that was going to start having an impact on his health.
Yeah.
The children, it started getting physical against the children too. As they slept, there were sheets pulled off their beds. They said they could feel their hair being pulled. And Betsy in particular would feel fingernails scratching her face being slapped and pinched, and she felt like she was being stuck with pins. Which is all absolutely horrifying. And then the thing starts to talk.
Oh my gosh. As if it wasn't bad enough.
The entity started communicating with John, starting with whistling noises, and then it became a series of whispers. And then it eventually identified itself as Kate.
Was Kate asking for more pizza? Give me more pizza.
As a little side note, there are differing accounts to explain who Kate was. There's a theory that she is a woman called Kate Batts, who was a former fiancé of John's, who was so outspoken, Bible-thumping, rude and contentious that he murdered her to avoid marrying her. After he moved...
Wait, is it fact that he murdered her or theory that he murdered her?
In one of the accounts, like, written not long after this, like, say, within, like, the next decade, they said that this, and then there are other accounts written around the same time that say completely different things.
Okay.
Just the classic old-timey history, differing accounts, word of mouth sort of thing. So John had actually originally moved to Tennessee, where he was living now with his family, from Halifax. But he had moved out with this Kate person. This is how the story goes. But she was so absolutely horrible to be around that he locked her up in the smokehouse and starved her to death. In another account, Kate is identified as a neighbour of the Bells who had claimed that they cheated her out of a land purchase. This version of Kate was well known in the area for being outspoken and assertive, and for claiming people had swindled her in business or financial matters. One thing she would do is claim that objects in her home were flying loose and that she needed to borrow pins from people, which she would then use to perform spells on them.
Like voodoo.
So Kate was a little bit witchy, yeah. But the version of Kate that's actually backed up by court documents is that she was a neighbour and that Kate's husband was the victim of a high-interest loan from John for the purchase of an enslaved person. So
Wow.
the Bells, she thinks, had fucked over her husband over the purchase of, I'm like, so sorry. The purchase of an enslaved person.
Seriously.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I mean, but they're both terrible. Somebody selling a person and then somebody buying a person. You're both garbage. Throw you in the trash.
Whoever Kate was, the entity in the home claimed to be her. The disturbances at first went on for about a year or maybe more. And John Bell was ashamed of it. He was too afraid to like provoke it even more. So he made his family keep the matter a profound secret, and they did. Eventually, it all became too much, probably because he couldn't feckin' eat. He eventually...
He couldn't what eat?
He eventually spilled the beans and invited the local reverend to come stay at his home in the hopes that the reverend could help. So this was Reverend Johnson and his... I think just him and his wife. So when the Johnsons stayed, same thing happened to them. Their covers were thrown off. They could hear the sound of smacking lips and sucking air through teeth.
Ew.
Oh, I hate that so much.
I just like...
Imagine
I just got
that like
chills.
right beside your ear when you're in bed.
Like, it's really annoying when you know where it's coming from. Terrifying when you don't know where it's coming from.
So imagine how dark and quiet it is in those times as well. Like there's no street lights.
Yeah. Right.
It was said that Mr. Johnson was a man of strong faith and cool courage. And when he recovered from the confusion of hearing all this weird shit in the house, he collected his wits and started talking to the being, demanded that it reveal itself and tell him for what purpose it was there. When it was talking, it, quote, repeated Mr. Johnson's song and prayer offered on the night of his first visit, and referred to word for word, personating the old gentleman, assimilating his character so perfectly that nobody could distinguish it from his voice and his prayer. So it basically started mimicking the Reverend in his exact voice.
Yeah.
I don't know why I find this so creepy above all of the rest, but anyway. The entity played favourites among the people in the home. When Mr. Johnson prayed, it would say,
Lord Jesus, how sweet old Sugarmouth prays, how I do love to hear him.
Wow.
It sounds like this is a way of like saying like your prayers don't mean shit. I love listening to them.
Yeah.
Keep saying them.
I was going to say, how very Southern.
Yeah.
Oh, bless your heart.
But the entity really loved Betsy. She was its favourite, and it terrorised her physically by, like we said, slapping and pulling her hair and whispering taunts at her about a local boy that she liked and who she would eventually get engaged to. It absolutely hated John.
Wait, so it liked the little girl and still treated her like that?
It used to slap her and taunt her and all of that, and like knew that she liked this boy and used to taunt her about this boy.
Oh my god.
But in contrast, it absolutely hated John. And when asked, it would declare that its singular purpose on Earth was killing him before leaving the place. So this was the dad.
Wow.
When John would try to work outside, he would hear the entity's taunts and feel a force tugging at his feet and at his shoes. So this wasn't even in the dark.
Wow.
Yeah.
Should have stayed in Nova Scotia, bro.
The spirit also knew things. They reckon it would visit North Carolina to... Oh, sorry, Halifax. This Halifax is in North Carolina, actually. I would have thought Nova Scotia.
Oh, my bad. We should have stayed in North Carolina then, buddy.
So it would visit John Bell's old neighborhood. It would never stay away longer than a day or an hour, but it always reported correctly the news or events of the day in that city. So it knew exactly what was going on in his old neighborhood. But like in those times especially, there was no way it could have made that journey.
Right. Or like Google.
Mm-hmm. An article at the time said, the witch never slept. It was never idle or confined to any place, but was here and there and everywhere, like the mist of night or the morning sunbeams. It was everything and nothing, invisible yet presence, spreading all over the neighbourhood, prying into everybody's business and domestic affairs, caught on to every ludicrous thing that happened, and all of the sordid, avaricious meanness that transpired, divining the inmost secrets of the human heart, and withal was a great blabbermouth, getting neighbours by the ears, taunting people with their sins and shortcomings, and laughing at their folly in trying to discover the identity of the mystery.
Wow.
How the fuck did it know?
Because it's a ghost. Yeah. A ghost.
Now, one of the prevailing theories how a lot of this stuff was able to happen. Now, it doesn't explain everything, especially not like when John was outside, unless his mind was starting to go, was that, like we said, there was a dispute over an enslaved person. One of the theories is that whoever was doing this, if this was Kate Batts, if she was still around, she was making her her slaves do all of the knocking and the tugging and sneaking around and all of that, because these people probably wouldn't have even suspected them whatsoever, because, you know, what would they have to do with it? Like, this has to be like an entity from above and has to know all of these things. And it's also an idea of like being like sending people in her stead to go to these other places and try and find out all of this stuff. But at the same time, sometimes the entity would only be, they said it would only be gone for like an hour or a day. It didn't really make sense on how they could have traveled back and forth in that much time.
That's so weird.
So the witch, or the entity, got exactly what she wanted. After a period of ill health, John's family found him dead, and they had realised that one of his medicine vials had been switched out, presumably by the witch. Afterward, the entity interrupted the mourners at his funeral by singing drinking songs really loudly. Yeah.
What in the world? And like, I can't imagine being at the funeral and like you start hearing this and it's like you're like trying to figure out where it's coming from, but you have no idea.
Like, these are like Baptist people, like it's probably like a great mark of like disrespect to be singing drinking songs at somebody's funeral. Like, they're all really devout, you know?
Right. That would be so creepy. I would just be like,
this
what in the
disembodied
world?
Voice, like, whispering and speaking and now singing at a funeral.
I'm also very confused by disembodied voices because you know how like your voice is what it is because it's like wind passing your vocal cords. So I'm just like, but how?
Yeah.
But how?
I actually saw there was a guy who got like a trachea transplant because he'd had throat cancer. And I saw like somebody had just made like a short little like documentary video about it, and they were asking like the donor's family like, does it sound like him? And they were like, not exactly. And the surgeon was just saying like, you know, there's still, you know, maybe the anatomy's the same, but it's everything around it that will influence like how deep your voice is or like how you can sing and all of that. So they're like, that's why, because you would think like if you like transplant a trachea, because that's your voice box, like it's, you know, wouldn't you sound like that person?
Your trachea is your voice box? I thought your trachea was the windpipe that like went from your esophagus to your lungs.
Like there's like a little bit of cartilage around it.
But that's where your voice comes from?
Hold on. Let us just double check. Rather than being one of those annoying people who just says things.
I'm like, wait a second.
Oh, I'm thinking larynx. You're so right.
Okay.
Yeah, larynx. Okay, so the guy got his larynx transplanted. Yeah, so the cartilage. Okay. Yeah,
different from below, the trachea.
Because I'm thinking where you get a tracheotomy.
Yeah, it's the thing that goes. Yeah, it goes to your lungs.
Bad.
I know all these things because of all my esophagus problems.
Oh yeah.
I also took anatomy in high school, so.
I took biology, which had an anatomy component, but Selgan. You don't use it, you lose it for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's some things that my brain just holds on to, and I feel like anatomy is one of them.
So the witch wasn't done even after John died, even though she said that she was going to be.
You said you were going to leave.
In 1821, she actually got Betsy to call off her engagement to the guy that she liked, who was called Joshua Gardner. And she eventually married one of her teachers. Betsy, you should have just stuck to the boy you liked. Although maybe he was a waste of space, we don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
If the witch liked her and didn't want her to marry this guy, maybe there was a reason. So after that happened, after she married one of her teachers, the witch told the family that it was going to leave, but that it would return in 7 years, in 1828. And it did. It returned with scratching on the furniture, moving objects, and tearing the blankets off the beds. This was now to like the children, the grown-up children of John Bell and their children.
Oh my gosh.
So this was to Lucy Bell, who was originally Bell, and her sons Richard and Joel. But they were smart and they chose not to encourage it. They decided to just not speak to this weird entity who was whistling and doing all this shit to them in the dark.
Also, it just like, because it said it was going to be back on whatever date. I'm sorry, I forgot what you said. But it's like...
in 7 years.
Yeah, one of the... like, it makes me feel like it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, where you like, you keep being like, oh, it's going to come back at this time, it's going to come back at this time, going to come back at this time. You're like feeding it.
Yeah, if you're attracting this kind of shit, then yeah. You're also looking out for it, you know? Like the slightest thing, you're going to be like, oh,
right,
it's back. So because they ignored it, it appeared to leave again and didn't leave for a period of time, but transferred to a sibling, John Jr.'s house. The entity stayed there for 3 weeks and communicated with him. But on the last night, she bid him farewell and she said that she would return in 107 years. But she has never been heard from again.
When you said bid farewell, I thought you said bit, like B-I-T. She bid him farewell. I was like, oh, wow. Aggressive.
Yeah, and that is the creepiest fuck story of the Bell Witch haunting.
Yeah. Now it makes me want to watch stuff about the Bell Witch.
Yeah, it's such a great story.
Because it's so intense. It's kind of like the, have you heard of the Conjuring House? Yeah. Like that real story is like really intense. It's like, damn, you just were like living with this.
Yeah, and like, even like when you talk about like your haunted like house like growing up there, it's so crazy that, you know, because I mean, what can you do? You can't just fucking like, I know every time we watch a haunted house like movie is to always just like, just leave, and people never leave because they've just like sunk all their money into this
Yeah.
house. That's why the first time you watch Insidious, it's like, oh my god, that's amazing, because they actually do
Oh.
leave at the first sign of a haunting.
They're like, peace out. We're actually not doing this.
Yeah, they're like, no, fuck this.
Yeah.
Like, they just like literally gather their children and leave. But that's how they find out that it's not houses that are haunted, it's
Yeah.
people.
It's pretty crazy when it's like, there's those people who try to leave and then it just like follows them everywhere. I'd be like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's a solution to this.
I used to hate it so much when I was a teenager that they always said that like hauntings and poltergeists and stuff, that like they sought out teenage girls. That was always the thing that they would
Because
say.
of like puberty.
Yeah, because it's like a period of transition and like it's the start of your fertility and all of this kind of stuff. So you're kind of like an energy source for them to feed off of.
Right.
So I think that's part of why, like, obviously in The Exorcist, like it's mentioned like that's why it goes after Reagan. And then in something that I don't know if we're going to cover, I know David asked us to cover, the Enfield haunting.
Yeah.
But that's another fraudulent one, I think.
Oh, really?
Do you think it's fraudulent?
I didn't know. I think maybe I haven't heard that side of the story
Okay.
because I've always known it to just be like what it is, just like the haunting.
Yeah. Yeah. I always got the vibe like when like that video of the young girl talking.
Oh.
And she's like talking in the ghost voice and it just sounds like a young girl going like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
They're like, oh,
Yeah.
look how creepy it is. It's like,
yeah.
hmm.
Yeah. I could do that.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting because there's like some of those hauntings that, I don't know, some of it seems real, some of it seems like it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's so many of them that it's just like a lot of the like really, really famous ones that they're so well covered that like most people have some sort of explanation for them and you're like, no.
yeah, well, that was like when I talked about like my haunted house and how people be like, oh, it's probably this, oh, it's probably that. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. It's
Mhm.
different when you're living with it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, not only are you very aware of like what's going on around you and like what's not going on around you,
Mm-hmm.
you also just like feel it. It feels different.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like I've heard weird noises in our house before and it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's like probably like this. Like it doesn't feel weird.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, it's kind of like you can't totally explain it. I don't know. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I feel like I'm just, like, talking gibberish right now.
No, but you get like the sense of like there's something not quite right, like your gut feeling.
Yeah, there's, like, a weird energy to it where it's just like, this isn't right. Something's weird going on.
Yeah.
And that was the feeling that I got in the house that I grew up in. It just,
Mm-hmm.
even when there wasn't stuff going on, I just never really felt comfortable. It always just felt like weird.
I always think about like there's an old folks home just outside of like the town where my mother is from, and anytime I went there I just didn't like the feeling of it.
Probably
You know,
because
like
hundreds of
nobody
people
likes
died
hospitals
there.
or yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like nobody likes hospitals or anything like that. Nobody likes, you know, like really sanitized places or anything like that, but there's just a different feeling in that place.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like there's so much like ending of lives going on.
So the second half of the Appalachian superstitions are: don't wash your clothes on Sunday. If you're walking with a friend and a light post or something that would like separate you comes up, you have to both walk on the same side or else your friendship will break up.
Ooh.
Hang a mirror by the door to protect against evil. Never leave a rocking chair rocking or you will invite spirits. When someone dies, cover the mirrors and open a window so their soul can leave. Ba-da-da-da.
That's like an Irish one too.
Oh,
like
really?
covering the mirrors. But we also close the curtains and stop the clock. So I think I might have mentioned that.
I think you did too.
Mhm.
So you're trapping
But
them.
there's-
No.
Yeah.
You're supposed to open the window.
Yeah, actually. But the other big one that's taken the internet by storm is that if you hear somebody calling your name when you're near the Appalachian woods at night, don't follow it.
Don't go. Don't do it.
If you see somebody that looks like you, don't go near them.
Yeah. If you're not in a place where you know somebody would be calling your name, just don't respond.
Just don't respond. Don't engage. Pretend you didn't hear them.
Yeah.
Eyes front.
Yeah.
Get to safety.
Get to safety.
And on that note, thank you for listening to episode 2 of season 2. This was Haunted Appalachia.
Season 2, episode 2, part 2, all the 2s. We did the thing.
2. Yeah. That's going to be our, it'll be our lucky number for this month.
So, yeah, thank you for joining us on our journey through Appalachia. Not Appalachia.
Yeah, it's definitely not Appalachia, Medardo.
Suck it.
Suck it.
I'm Emily.
And I am Niamh.
Send us your advice that you want answered. If you have advice that you need about something, anything, send it to us.
Yeah. Especially dating advice, because we've got some good ideas for that.
Yes, we really do. Fuck yeah, folklore.
Fuck yeah, folklore. Bye.
Bye.
Don't go into the woods.
Don't go. Don't answer your phone or whatever. I don't know.